Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Phil at the Movies. I'm your host, Phil Walsh, and you are listening to another episode of this show that is always for the love of movies. I hope you had a great holiday weekend and had a chance to maybe go see some movies at your local theater. I had a great weekend for hashtag cinema. It started on Thursday night, and frankly, it carried throughout the weekend. I won't get too much into the weeds of it because some of these I'm going to be saving for a future review. But Thursday night, I had a chance to see the new film Wildcat. It's a biopic about the life of Flannery O'Connor, and it's directed by Ethan Hawke, and it also stars his daughter Maya Hawke as Flannery O'Connor. And it's just a wonderfully weird and imaginative way to do a biopic. And I found myself to be really impressed by the direction and the way the story unfolded. The film was also capped off with a Q&A by Ethan Hawke, and he was just awesome and cool in person. And I had a great time hearing his thoughts and sort of what went into the making of the movie. But again, I'm sort of moving around in different points here, so bear with me. Friday night was another night of cinema. Had a chance to see Jaws again on the big screen, which that is always fantastic. You can understand that. Pardon me for the pun, but it's one of those movies where I always love seeing it with an audience because people just sort of have a ball with this
which is
movie, and
always
always a plus. But of course, the big highlight of the weekend was seeing Furiosa, and that is going to be the subject of my review today. Now, before I begin, let me just say, as always, thank you for tuning in or watching the show on YouTube and hearing what I have to say on movies. And if you could be so kind to recommend and pass along this podcast to anyone who you think might enjoy listening to a fellow movie buff go on, perhaps too long at certain points, over a love of movies. Now, on to the main event. I'm recording this episode a few days after seeing the film, and I cannot get it out of my head. This is the second film of the year after Dune Part 2 that has left a memorable impression on me. Interestingly, and perhaps ironically, both of these films feature mountains and mountains of sand. So there's that little fun factoid. But Furiosa and Dune Part 2 are certainly different stories. They're individual films set in their own unique universes, but I think what unites both of these movies, or perhaps connects them for me, is the artistic brilliance of both director George Miller for Furiosa and Denis Villeneuve for Dune Part 2. These films are both riveting in terms of their scope, epic, some might say, but perhaps the greatest strength is the intimacy. Both films are poignant and beautifully reflective. I call them a blockbuster, or blockbusters with a heart, if you will. Now, Furiosa is the next installment in the Mad Max saga, and it acts as a prequel to the film Fury Road. Now, Furiosa serves as both an enhancement to the previous film while also existing as a self-contained story. And I know sometimes people will say, oh, a prequel, automatically there are no stakes. The fun thing about this movie, the enjoyable thing about this movie, one of the enjoyable things about this movie is I felt the stakes. Even though we know where this character goes and we know what happens in the next film, the way the story is crafted and the performance by Anya Taylor-Joy, which I will get into in just a little bit, you are riveted from the opening shot right until the close, which I have to say beautifully connects to the opening of Fury Road. But I thought this film had high stakes, despite the fact that it does exist as a prequel. Now, interestingly, I think you could watch both Fury Road or Furiosa and Fury Road as one film, and I think that is something I'll probably end up doing once the physical media release happens in a few months. Just thinking about a nearly 5 hour trip to the wasteland sounds like a great night to me. But back on to this film. As I said, it stars Anya Taylor-Joy as the title character, first portrayed by Charlize Theron, and also joining her this time is Chris Hemsworth, who plays a wonderfully demented character, appropriately named Dr. Dementus. He's a biker warlord and is frankly much more psychologically constructed than even our previous foe from Fury Road, who I call Darth Vader on acid, the famous Immortan Joe. Hemsworth is clearly having a ball in this film. And just as a side note about him in it, he chews the scenery with delicious viciousness and a maniacal swagger. I love seeing him play against type. He certainly is put into a box, sadly, because of his affiliation with the Marvel movies, but it was really refreshing to see him break outside of that box and show his range and strength as an actor. Now, the way this film is structured is frankly perfect in my eyes because the first 45 minutes or so, almost an hour if now that I think about it, we spend with an even younger version of Furiosa, played masterfully by Alea Brown. And I thought that was a real interesting way to do this story. You could have just started it and introduced us to Anya Taylor-Joy's version of the character right off the bat, but I think it was smart to start with her as a child and watch what happens throughout her life to see where she ultimately ends up later on in this film and ultimately when we see the character in Fury Road. The film works in a beautiful way that you can kind of see the trauma and the burden that ultimately she is gonna carry in this version and ultimately in the next film. She loses everything. Furiosa loses everything right at the start of this film. Of course, the world is gone to hell in a handbasket. It's a post-apocalyptic, and she sort of is in this last bit of greenery, if you will. They call it the green place, where her and a bunch of survivors or whatever you want to call them are living together in harmony and peace. But all of that goes awry when she is kidnapped. And then after she is kidnapped, her mother is tragically killed right in front of her. She loses everything and she becomes a prisoner to Dr. Dementis and later a slave, only to build herself into a respected and, in a lot of ways, fearless leader under the Immortan Joe character. And interestingly, the way the story is structured, we see a character that is brought to their lowest point, and then we're watching her rebuild both metaphorically and literally at the same time. The world, as I said, has gone to hell in a handbasket. It is a struggle for survival in this desert wasteland where warlords battle for domination and control. And we kind of see that she sort of has 2 points to her MO. She is certainly building up her body, mind, and spirit, but she's also building her thirst for revenge against Dr. Dementis. Now, Furiosa is a quiet revenge story that is ultimately grandiose in terms of the visuals and the action set pieces, but it's the intimacy that I think is the most telling part of this film. It is a movie about survival, survival in terms of an internal struggle and external struggle. Now, on to Anya Taylor-Joy. She fills in the missing pieces of the character we first meet in Fury Road. Again, Fury Road is much more of a straightforward film, and I kind of refer to this one as an enhancement on that film. Now, for example, there is a moment in Fury Road where Furiosa walks into the middle of the desert. She takes off her mechanical arm, she drops to her knees and lets out a guttural and gut-punching scream, and Charlize Theron does a masterclass job with that particular scene, but now we have a different understanding of it. We know the context. It isn't just her sort of screaming, kind of, "Woe is me." We really understand what she has gone through and brought her to this point as the wind whips around and she's surrounded by this desert wasteland. The scene now has so much more weight because, again, as I said, we understand where she has come from. What is the context? This is the woman who has been hoping and believing that she could return to her home, if you will, the green place, as it's called. And we see that all of her sacrifice, all of her planning is for nothing, and all that is left is a barren desert wasteland. Furiosa is like poetry. I mentioned that early on, and it sort of weaves stanza after stanza, revealing an even more raw yet impactful picture that it stays with you. I mean, there are moments in this film where you are literally transfixed by what is happening on screen, and then you keep saying, "Oh my God, are they going to do this?" And then they do it, and it just blows your mind. I found myself utterly speechless leaving the theater. Taylor Joy, much like Tom Hardy in Fury Road, plays a character with few words. Now, that's a bold choice in any film, but nevertheless, a brilliant one. This movie is the perfect embodiment, I believe, of show don't tell. I don't need monologues and paragraph after paragraph of exposition. Give me insight into a character through their actions. Every fight, every swing of the body, every head tilt, every glance. And Anya Taylor-Joy has just beautiful and vexing eyes and sort of transfixing eyes, I should say. And her look tells the story. Every glance she makes tells a story and gives us further insight into this character. And that's a remarkable skill and accomplishment to be able to convey a sense of emotion and danger and fear and trepidation and survival without saying a word. And of course, film is a visual medium, and I applaud George Miller for letting the story dictate the images instead of the images dictating the story. Now, a word about the action in this film. It is pulsating, pedal to the metal, with shots and moments that are going to leave you wanting to collect your jaw off the theater floor. And that is not an overstatement. I mean, this movie, the stuff that happens in the desert, just whether it's a car chase, whether you've got people battling on top of a tanker, I mean, you are right there in the action, and it does not let up. Glorious and riveting all the way through. Now, I'm going to say something a little controversial here, but again, I always tell you what I feel on these particular episodes and these reviews, and so this is my hot take, if you will. I find this film to be better than Fury Road. All right, mic drop moment there, but I don't mean that in a way to say that, my feelings have changed on Fury Road. No, I think that film is a masterpiece in every sense of the word, but Furiosa is different in terms of its construction. Fury Road is a straightforward and to the point action film. And with Furiosa, I find there is more there, if you understand what I mean. And again, that doesn't diminish or criticize Fury Road, but the way this film is set up, it is much more complex and psychological. I mean, there's a reason it's a prequel and not a sequel. It gives us a beginning and an understanding to a character that we meet in Fury Road without any sense of context or understanding outside of a few lines and moments in the film. All of that comes full circle with seeing where she came from, how she came to be, and what brought her to this point. And I love it when a film can provide insight into a character, particularly one that is sort of badass from the very beginning. I like that we go back to the start and we see innocence corrupted, if you will, but not in a way where she, goes down the path of evil, but sort of goes on this self-righteous course of vengeance to sort of not only avenge her family and those that have been taken from her, but to also avenge what she has lost within herself. Furiosa, I think, is one of the greatest action characters ever created, and what makes her excel is more than the spectacle that she crafts, though she has incredible badass moments in this movie, but it's the psychological underpinnings that are a part of her story. Now, again, I could be clever and mince words, but I'll just say it. Anya Taylor-Joy is a badass. I mean, she is a badass in this film, pure and simple, and it just works. Whether she's whipping out a rifle or barreling through the mountains of the sand, she is in one of the greats, and she shows off beautifully and a lot of times quietly her skills as an actress. Again, show don't tell. I love it when you can take a film like this, which has already got incredible visuals, and those visuals are then enhanced by what a character does with a look of the eye or a head tilt. Really powerful stuff. And again, when she does speak, there is a special resonance. Near the end of the movie, where she confronts Dementis after they have this incredible standoff and chase, first off, it's masterfully shot, but secondly, the exchange that she delivers, and I won't reveal it because I think it's one of those moments you have to experience it yourself, and I think we'll have the same reaction I did, which is awe and immediate chills. It's just so powerful. And on a note, just to compare, not even compare, but sort of put her alongside what Charlize Theron does in Fury Road. It's a seamless transition. I mean, there are moments in this film I thought they had dubbed her voice with Charlize. Like it's so incredible how you can literally think it's the same character, sort of, taken out and put back in this film. Yes, it is the same world and whatnot, but just like it's a perfect transition from this film into the next. And again, as I said, this whole movie is bold in a lot of ways because I mean, a lot of people don't always like prequels. They think they're unnecessary. When you have a character that you can sort of develop and expand upon, I think you should do it any chance you get. And that's what is accomplished in this movie. We have already a cool character that is now enhanced and much more, frankly, interesting than even she was in the first film. And I thought she was incredible in that one. Again, it's like poetry in a lot of ways. There's a rhythm to this film that you don't always get in these types of movies. Even when you have the setup of a straightforward revenge tale, which we've seen in countless films across a myriad of genres, the notes just hit differently in Furiosa, which is a credit to the film's visual imagination, but also B, the memorability of the performances by Taylor-Joy and Chris Hemsworth. Whereas Fury Road goes from 0 to 100 like snapping your finger, Furiosa goes from 0 to 60, then pauses and allows the magnitude of the scenes or the moments to stir and later simmer. It then accelerates but pauses again, kind of going from 60 to 90, and then sort of taking its time, never decelerating its momentum, always engaged in sort of forward movement. But this movie, in a lot of ways, is less about the speed and more about the velocity. And frankly, I hope this is not the last outing for this character or this series. The Mad Max films are a clever spin on the post apocalyptic narrative that unleash three-dimensional characters, high octane action, and thought provoking narratives that stay with you even after the credits have rolled. And as I said, I sincerely hope we can get to go back to this film or to this universe because there's a lot of fertile ground that even this film lays out that I think could be spun off into more crafty and clever tales in the wasteland. And just a note about director George Miller: at 79, the guy is a living legend with a madcap grip on creativity. And literally, I love his energy and passion that he brings to this film. I can see it remaining as the year unwinds one of my favorite film, and frankly, I implore you and I encourage you to check it out. Don't wait for the streaming, don't wait for the physical media release. See it in a theater, see it on the largest screen possible. The movie is worth your time. And I say this even if you're not a fan of these particular genre films, see it anyway because yes, there is spectacle, but there is also a story which is so poetic and raw, and despite sort of the fantastical elements, is grounded in an emotional understanding that we all can at least relate to in some capacity. And I feel we're increasingly lucky to experience these kind of movies, original, creative, bold stories that are passion projects, not corporate process garbage. And Furiosa is unlike many films in the genre where it has a soul. And it has, of course, the moments of fist bumping action, which are, of course, important ingredients in any action movie. But in addition to the spectacle, there is that point of view, which is, I think, so incredible and so necessary because that's what makes a film like this sort of a B to an A grade in a lot of ways. It's an ultimate triumph. Nothing but, to put it this way, nothing but blood, sweat, and Furiosa. And that does it for my review today. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in and hearing what I have to say on this magnificent film. I say see it twice. I'm looking forward to seeing this at least 2 more times, and I'd recommend catching a screening in a Dolby theater because the sound design in this film is on a whole other level. It is pulsating, electric. It's like a character in its own right. But that does it for me today. I'll be back next week, and we will certainly do this all over again for the love of movies.